Reports are that Buena Vista, Disney's distribution company, are frantically trying to complete negotiations with China to allow Endgame to open the same time there as it'll open in the US domestic box office. If this can happen, we might be looking at the total opening weekend box office record being smashed and $1 billion being taken in by Avengers Endgame. When we look at the inflation-adjusted world box office opening records for movies, we see that Infinity War is ranked number 1. It took in a total of $640 million officially over its opening weekend. So $1 billion for the next installment seems like a very large increase if the absolute record ever is only $640 million. The first part of this $1 billion puzzle is why Buena Vista is desperate to negotiate with China for its opening date. When we take a look at the Avengers Infinity War foreign openings, we can see that it took in a total officially of $382,823,108. If we look down a little bit, China took in a massive $191 million. However, China did not open at the same time as the North American opening, and so that $191 million, as big as it is, isn't actually included in the $382 million the film took in officially for opening weekends from foreign countries. In total, there was $209 million in foreign opening money that isn't actually counted in the official foreign opening money for the Avengers Infinity War. So although the Infinity War records smashed everything else with $640 million officially, that doesn't include another $209 million. And so if we actually count the $209 or $210 million in addition to the $640 million, the actual opening weekend numbers that Infinity War did in all of the countries in the world was just under $850 million. And so, if nothing changes between the box office from Infinity War and Endgame, if there's no extra buzz, if there's no increased ticket sales, all that has to happen to absolutely smash the opening record is to just get China to open at the same time. If everything stays the same, we'll get $850 million for the opening weekend, a brand new record by a massive margin, and that doesn't require any new buzz for the film. It doesn't require anyone extra wanting to see the film. So that's our starting point. That's why Buena Vista is currently desperate to get China involved. All of these films and all of the distribution companies want China to open at the same time because it really makes or breaks a record. Okay, Captain Marvel was able to get China on board, and so Captain Marvel's numbers are a little bit better than some of the competing films around it because they didn't have China included. And Shazam has managed to get China involved in its numbers as well. So the Shazam opening numbers will be inflated a little bit more than other films because it's been able to get the lucrative China opening weekend involved. So how do we get $850 million up to $1 billion? The early reports going out right now are that they expect the domestic box office opening for Endgame to go up around about 10% from what Infinity War had, and it'll be somewhere in the neighborhood of $282 million. Now, these are just the early expectations, and they may be low or high, who knows, but that is a 10% increase right there. So if we assume that the foreign money can also increase by 10%, if we increase the $850 million, if we take an extra 10% on top of that, that will take us up to $935 million. Not quite $1 billion, but $935 million, getting pretty close. So is there anywhere else we can look at some sort of way to predict, can we get more money? Is it possible to squeeze out more than $935 million for this film? Star Wars The Force Awakens has the record opening in the North American market after inflation-adjusted figures are used. The Infinity War has the non-inflation-adjusted record. But the average earnings per theatre are a fair bit larger for Star Wars The Force Awakens versus the Avengers Infinity War. So, according to Box Office Mojo, the average amount earned by the Star Wars Force Awakens cinemas was $62,809, while it was $55,941 for Infinity War. So, that works out to be somewhere around 12% better off. So there's about a 12% increase there. If the Infinity War simply has the same profitability that Star Wars The Force Awakens has, or sorry, not Infinity War, if Infinity War sequel, if Endgame has the same profitability rate that Star Wars The Force Awakens has, but it's shown at the same number of screens and sessions, and that'll make then another 12% that we can get. So there is extra capacity without needing to increase anything to get 12% over the top, but we need around about 20% to bring the $850 million all the way up to $1 billion. And so a 20% increase might just be a little bit too much to ask for a film that's only 1 year older than the one that's trying to break the record off. So the number of theaters will not be greatly increased in the last year. The number of screens won't be greatly increased, and so capacity won't be that much bigger. So it might actually be difficult to even be able to get an extra 20%, but I'm sure they'll be trying very hard to do so. So there just might not be enough screens and sessions available over the top of what was going on with Infinity War, and then using the extra profitability that Star Wars The Force Awakens had to show that this is something that can easily be done. Now, I'm not saying it can't happen. I'm sure there's more than a 20% gap in the opening weekend done for the Infinity War over what could possibly be done. I'm sure every single screen wasn't used at 100% capacity with all the session times. So it's definitely possible, but I think it'll be fairly difficult to do, unfortunately. So $1 billion is there. It could happen, but it might be difficult to get the full $1 billion. But whether or not the film is able to increase the opening by 20% over what Infinity War did is completely inconsequential if Buena Vista can't get China involved to open on the same day. So if China does not open on the same day, or at least I should say that week, if it doesn't open that week, then all of the Chinese figures will not be included in the official totals, and it will miss out on somewhere in the neighborhood of $200 million, which obviously is a massive amount of money. And without that $200 million, it'd be very difficult to think that it could do $1 billion opening weekend. It's still possible, but I think it would be very improbable to do that. And so there is still no news out yet as to when China will open the next installment of Infinity Wars, the Endgame. But generally speaking, they normally announce more than a month in advance when they're actually going to show a film, when the film will open. And so because there's only about a month left until Endgame starts, it seems unlikely that it is actually going to get the same weekend opening date in China as it has for the rest of the world, unfortunately. So it still could happen, and we'll keep looking to see when the news comes out. I'm sure if the news does reveal that China will have the same opening weekend date as the rest of the world, there'll be a massive amount of articles, and they'll be talking about all kinds of records being broken, quite rightly. But until that happens, we just have to wait and see. Thanks for listening, and I'll catch you next time.